Truman Show is a lifestyle. It's a noble life. It is a truly blessed life.
Yeah, tell me something we don't know. All right, promise me one thing, though.
It's all true. It's all real. Nothing here is fake. Nothing you see on this show is fake. It's merely controlled.
Greetings. So today I'm talking about one of my favorite movies called The Truman Show. It's not so much my favorite movie for the acting or how the movie plays out. It's more for the concept of the movie. So if you're not familiar with The Truman Show, it's a simulated television show that's based around Truman's life, starring Jim Carrey. So it shows him from conception until his eventual death or escape from the reality TV show. And I found it very kind of profound in the way that it explores human psychology. When we know we're being filmed or watched, we tend to act a lot differently than when we're in our privacy or not being watched as much.
Truman, you're gonna be late.
Okay. Good morning.
Morning. Good morning.
Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
And I think we're currently living in some version of The Truman Show, and that's around Netflix, Instagram, Facebook or live stories, in that we tend to be sharing or checking in or capturing almost all parts of our life. So unlike Truman though, at least we to some extent can control what we're showing or not online. The other part that I found very captivating in The Truman Show is how it explores the monotony of regular life. So it shows Truman himself quite bored, seeking the unknown or trying to explore. In the movie, he's trying to go to Fiji, or he's trying to get off the island or wherever he's trapped. So I found that quite interesting. But then on the other side, there's the audience. So it shows the people who are watching The Truman Show, and also how boring their lives are. And I think that ties in quite nicely to 2019, in that people are really amusing themselves to death via Netflix or social media. And I think that's going to become more of an issue going forward now, because we're growing up in an era where millennials, or Generation Z, I believe they're called, so the latest generations have grown up with the internet and smartphones. So for them to not use their phones or to put it down, it seems like a punishment almost. It's like, hey, why do I have to put my phone down? Why can't I be plugged in at all times?
Morning. Hank. Morning, Truman. Morning, Truman. Good morning, Truman.
Hey, how are you guys? Beautiful day, isn't it?
Always.
And how's your lovely wife?
Good. How about yours?
Oh, couldn't be better. Good. Nice talking to you, Truman.
You
Well,
too.
we must go now.
Hey, think about that policy,
Yes,
huh?
sir. Thank you.
Okay, that's 2 for 1. That's a good deal. Doppelganger special.
Hey.
And throughout The Truman Show, they're playing Ronda La Turque by Mozart, which I think is quite fitting because that song is very repetitive. And it shows Truman going through his days, and there's not that much diversity in his days. Sure, he meets or has slightly different conversations, but he's really lacking novelty throughout his days. So it shows him waking up, meeting the twins as the Ronda La Turque's playing, the newspaper scene, waving at his neighbors, almost recycled conversations. And I think a lot of people do that as well too, where we just say certain greetings or pleasantries, even though we don't really care or mean them. So a little bit superficial, but I think The Truman Show really brings that kind of full circle in the end, where it shows him almost exploring or, snapping his fingers to see if people are going to respond differently, or telling his wife in the car, in about 5 minutes, this car is going to drive by, or this person's going to walk by with flowers. And yeah, I think all of us need to remember it sometimes, that it's okay to have like novel times, or to explore, to seek the unknown, and not be stuck in this kind of treadmill of monotonous recycled days.
As Truman grew up, we were forced to manufacture ways to keep him on the island.
I like to be an explorer, like the great Magellan.
Oh, well, you're too late. There's really nothing left to explore.
Finally, I came up with the concept of Kirk's drowning.
Most effective. Truman's been terrified of the water ever since.
When Kirk read the synopsis for the Death at Sea episode, he was disappointed, to say the least. And I'm sure that's what caused him to break back onto the set.
There's running concepts in the movie with Truman's father and his fear of water. So in one of the episodes, or when Truman was young, they decided that, well, his father's maybe getting too emotional or overly empathetic towards his, television son. So they decided, okay, this character's no good, let's axe him. And the best way to do that is have him drown. And then later on, we see him come back as an extra and try to reach out to his son, his simulated son.
Wax.
See you later.
Truman realizes and notices his father's back, and he wants to make a connection with him, or he tries to reach out, and he's quickly scooted off the set. So that's quite sad, and it has like a deeper meaning maybe, and that Truman's really not in control of his life.
Yeah, I know. You know, Truman, I'm not allowed to talk to you. Really?
Yeah, well, I can understand it. I'm a pretty dangerous character.
I'm sorry, it's not up to me.
Girls have got to be careful. You have a boyfriend, right?
No, it's
Of course.
not that.
Was it Meryl, the girl that was with me? But we're not. We're friends.
It's nothing like that.
It's how I look. Not your type.
No.
I like your pen. I was wondering that myself. Would you want to maybe possibly sometime go out for some pizza or something? Like Friday? Saturday? Sunday, Monday, Tuesday? We have finals tomorrow.
Yeah, I know. If we don't go now, it won't happen. Do you understand? So what do you want to do?
He's not allowed to choose who he falls in love with. When Truman has his memory flashbacks, they keep dragging his ideal girl, or the Lauren, the one from the library, away from him, and he feels a longing or a deeper sadness that he never got time, or he keeps cutting out pictures of eyes to try to match up and remember what she looks like. She even says in the library scene, hey, I'm not allowed to talk to you. And Truman kind of clowns around saying well, yeah, I'm a dangerous guy, or am I not your type? But really what she means is the producer, or she isn't written into the script. Like, she's literally not allowed to date him because of the script that Christof had made for him and her. Truman asks her in the library scene, which I like, well, can I take you on a date? Can we get pizza? And she's like, no, I can't. And he's like, what about next week? And she's like, now, meaning if we don't take this moment, it might never happen again. Most people have free will, but that's the epitome that Truman doesn't have free will, and that his whole life is a script. So they run off, then they get captured kind of at the beach, and she gets scooted off with her so-called dad, and Truman's left confused. But she's able to penetrate deep enough to give Truman enough information saying, hey, this isn't real, nothing's real, we're all actors, this isn't my name. And after that moment, he starts to question things like what is going on, and he's trying to make sense of what's happening.
Oh, yes.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, I love it. No me interesa. Bueno, señorita, hasta luego. Las noticias son muy importantes. Ya lo sé. Por eso que no tienes dinero.
So this scene is where Truman is really kind of having that like epiphany, hey, stuff isn't making sense here. Am I the only real person in this? Is everyone else just an actor? He's starting to put the pieces together, and I think that's a lot like 2019, where he stops the buses, or he's just having that moment of clarity and the music comes on. That's almost what it's like when we put our phones down, or our battery dies and we're on an airplane, or we're stuck in a position. It's almost like that Limitless Bradley Cooper moment where we see things clearer because we're not constantly glued to our phones, and we're not captivated by a notification or an instant messaging service. So I think that scene, I don't know why specifically, got me thinking like how good it is and how beneficial and valuable it is to turn our phones off and to kind of be dialed into the real world. So as much as I love social media, my recent course is all around that, I think it's important to be conscious that we are social creatures and there's other ways of socializing than just online, in person.
Thank you both so much for your help. I really appreciate it.
He's lucky to be alive, man. Next time we're going to have to file charges.
I understand. Thanks again.
Good
Good
night.
night. Let me get you some help, Truman. You're not well.
Why do you want to have a baby with me? You can't stand me.
That's not true. Why don't you let me fix you some of this new Mococo drink? All natural cocoa beans from the upper slopes of Mountain Nicaragua, no artificial sweeteners.
What the hell are you talking about? Who are you talking to?
I've tasted other cocos. This is the best.
What the hell does this have to do with anything? Tell me what's happening!
Well, you're having a nervous breakdown. That's what's happening.
You're part of this, aren't you?
Roman!
Meryl!
You are scaring me!
You're scaring me, Meryl. What are you gonna do? Dice me? Slice me or peel me?
There's so many choices.
Do something!
What'd you say? Who are you talking to?
Nothing, I didn't say anything.
Kind of aha that I had watching this movie again in 2019 was when Truman is starting to realize that things aren't making sense. All of his friends or his wife or his school teacher, everyone that he's known throughout his life is kind of telling him like, no, this is normal, or when he really starts questioning things, they even go as far to tell him like he's crazy. And I think that's very, telling in that we do the same thing. When kids question, the status quo or their teachers, or when they're not obedient, or when they don't think the way that we want them to, what do? We tell them like, hey, get back in line, or hey, settle down, or in extreme cases, we medicate them via ADHD meds like Ritalin or Adderall, and we just tell them like, hey, keep your shutters on like a horse racer, just think straight, do what you're told, and don't be naughty, don't be boisterous. And yeah, I just think that's not a great idea. I think if we had more free thinkers in the world would be a better place. If more people questioned what was really going on, we would live in a more sane or interesting world. While I don't like the idea of being monitored 24/7 or living in an Orwellian surveillance state, I think there's definitely ways that we can kind of leverage technology and social media in 2019. And one of those is like accountability. So in my course, The Life Funnel, I talk about that a lot, where when you put ideas out into social media world or into the World Wide Web, you're kind of letting yourself win or lose with a bigger audience or on a bigger platform. So I think that's very powerful when you're setting goals, because just putting a goal out there and knowing that so many people are witnessing that is going to really force you to put in that extra ounce of effort, or to really be accountable to what you're saying. It's too easy just to say, write a little sticky note or say to a few friends, oh, I'm going to do this. But if you post that on like a big platform and everyone you've ever known sees that, or, a majority of them, that's really going to force you to think like, oh, wow, I don't want to lose face, or I don't want to not be consistent with what I'm saying. So that's one way to leverage social media and the Truman Show concept. Another way that I think social media and the Truman Show is really powerful is kind of that transparency. People tend to act very differently when they know they're being monitored or watched, or just when there's a bigger audience or when certain people are around. For me, I love that, because I kind of cringe, or I get very uncomfortable, and I'll call people out on it, like, hey, you acted this way in front of these people or in this environment, and now you're acting, suddenly very different. I get it, not everyone's going to act the same at all times, but I think there's certain ways of acting that are better than others, and I think holding yourself to a higher standard or being more accountable for your actions at all times is like a plus. It's just the idea of, police officers wearing body cams to make sure that they don't mistreat people or, get trigger happy suddenly. And I think people do that, not with triggers necessarily, on guns, but they do that with maybe abusive words or holding themselves to a low standard when they're around certain people, like being too comfortable maybe, or just being too rude at times. And then when other people are around, they can like flip on a switch and suddenly be, husband of the year, father of the year, son of the year. And it's just overly superficial, where I think if more people viewed themselves being monitored or witnessed at all times, the world would be a better place to live in, or just people would treat each other with more respect because they don't want to lose face. And I think that's like a positive way.
Incidentally, I believe Truman is the first child to have been legally adopted by a corporation.
That's correct.
The show has generated enormous revenues, now equivalent to the gross national product of a small country.
People forget it takes the population of an entire country to keep the show running.
Mm-hmm. Since the show is on 24 hours a day without commercial interruption, all those staggering revenues are generated by product placement.
That's true. Everything on the show is for sale, from the actors' wardrobe, food products, to the very homes they live in.
And, of course, all of it available in the Truman catalog.
There's a level of transparency that I think is really beneficial to the consumer. So in the Truman Show, as they're plugging different products, you can really see for yourself of how Truman is using those products. Like, does he really like those beers? Does he really like his lawnmower or his hot chocolate or his clothes? If he doesn't, he's going to say that because he doesn't know that he's being monitored or filmed at all times. So I think that's interesting.
We've become bored with watching actors give us phony emotions. We're tired of pyrotechnics and special effects. While the world he inhabits is, in some respects, counterfeit, there's nothing fake about Truman himself.